Welcome to the deep dive. You've told us you're curious, and well, our job is to dig into your sources, pull out that core knowledge you need, and give you those key insights without all the noise.
That's right. We know you, the learner, are looking for those real aha moments.
Exactly. And today, that's what we're aiming for.
So we're doing a deep dive into some excerpts from Barbara Oakley's Uncommon Sense teaching. We're going to unpack the fundamental ideas about how we actually learn.
Yeah, and this isn't just theory, right? It's about understanding how our brains work so you can find, better ways to learn yourself.
Absolutely gets into the nuts and bolts. Brain function, practical techniques.
Right. The book covers a lot, brain systems, classroom stuff, really practical tips. So whether you're studying, teaching, or honestly just want to get better at absorbing things, I think you'll find something useful here.
Definitely.
Okay, so let's jump in. The book starts with this really interesting idea about two main ways our brain learns, two pathways.
Yeah, two key pathways. It talks about this learn it, link it process. First, basically making connections in your long-term memory, strengthening them, building on them.
Okay, learn it, link it.
And these connections happen mainly through two distinct learning systems, the declarative and the procedural.
Declarative and procedural. Okay, what's the difference?
Well, declarative learning is the conscious stuff. It involves your working memory, the hippocampus part of your brain. It's how you learn facts, names, information you can consciously recall and state. Think explicit knowledge.
So like remembering historical dates or vocabulary words.
Exactly. It's relatively fast to learn initially, but it can be slower to actually use because you often have to actively search for the information in your memory.
Right, that feeling of it's on the tip of my tongue.
Precisely. Now, procedural learning is different. It's largely non-conscious, more automatic. This involves a different part of the brain, the basal ganglia.
Okay, non-conscious, like skills.
Skills, habits, yeah. Things you can do without really thinking about the steps. Think about riding a bike, or typing, or even speaking your native language fluently.
Ah, okay, so that takes longer to learn initially.
Much longer, typically. It requires practice, repetition, but once you've learned something procedurally, it's incredibly fast and efficient to use. It becomes almost automatic.
So one's fast to learn, slow to use. The other's slow to learn, fast to use. Interesting.
And the key thing is, they aren't separate silos. Really effective learning involves both.
How so?
Well, you might learn the rules of grammar, declaratively, consciously memorize them. But true fluency comes when those rules become procedural, when you use them automatically through lots of speaking practice.
So the conscious knowledge gives you the foundation, the flexibility.
Right, and the procedural system gives you the speed and automaticity. The best learning really gets both systems firing.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. So it's this back and forth. Now, the book also talks quite a bit about working memory. You mentioned it with declarative learning. It's like the brain's scratch pad.
Yeah, you could think of it like that. Or like juggling. Oakley uses that analogy. It's where you hold information you're actively thinking about right now.
But it's limited.
Very limited. This is a crucial point. Most people can only hold about, say, 3 or 4 chunks or balls of new information in their working memory at any one time.
Only 3 or 4. Wow. Okay, that explains why trying to process too much new stuff at once feels overwhelming.
Exactly. Your mental juggler starts dropping the balls. And, this capacity does vary a bit from person to person, which can affect how quickly someone seems to pick things up.
So some people naturally have a slightly larger scratch pad.
Sort of, yeah.
Mm.
But the good news is it's not necessarily fixed. You can use strategies to manage it better, effectively expanding its function, even if the raw capacity doesn't change much.
Okay, so it's not just about having more space, but using it smarter. What kind of strategies help with that?
Well, chunking is a big one. Grouping information into meaningful units, like how we remember phone numbers not as individual digits, but as like 3 smaller groups.
Right, yeah.
Visual aids are also great. Diagrams, charts, mind maps. They can kind of offload some of the information visually, so you're not holding it all in your head.
That makes sense.
And retrieval practice, which we'll talk more about, is key for moving things out of working memory and into long-term storage. And finally, scaffolding, breaking complex tasks down into smaller steps.
Okay, chunking, visuals, retrieval, scaffolding. Good practical tips. You mentioned moving things to long-term memory, and that brings up active learning. The book really emphasizes this, doesn't it? It's not just about sitting and listening.
Absolutely not. Active learning means you're mentally engaged in the process. You're doing something with the information, thinking about it, discussing it, applying it. not just passively receiving it.
So getting your hands dirty, mentally speaking.
Exactly. And engaging multiple senses can really help cement the learning too.
So instead of just reading about, say, photosynthesis, you might draw a diagram, explain it to a friend, or maybe even do a small experiment if possible.
Perfect examples. And the book lists lots of effective techniques. Things like think, pair, share, where you think individually, then discuss with a partner, then share with the group.
I've seen that used.
Hands-on experiments, obviously. Problem-solving activities where you have to apply the knowledge. Even having students lead discussions or present parts of the material. Collaborative projects, too.
It sounds much more involved and probably more memorable. What are the big advantages?
Well, engagement goes way up, naturally. Understanding tends to be deeper because you're wrestling with the ideas. It definitely helps develop critical thinking and problem-solving skills.
And retention, I imagine.
Oh, significantly better retention, yes. You're building stronger neural connections. Plus, you often develop better communication skills and learn from your peers.
Makes total sense. Now, you mentioned retrieval practice a couple of times. It sounds really powerful for making knowledge stick. Can you break that down a bit more?
Sure. Retrieval practice is simply the act of pulling information out of your memory, actively recalling it.
So not just rereading notes or highlighting a textbook.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's the opposite of passive review. It's testing yourself, trying to bring the information to mind without looking at the source.
Yeah.
Oakley stresses it's one of the absolute best ways to strengthen those neural links in long-term memory.
Like exercising a memory muscle.
That's a great way to think about it. Every time you successfully retrieve something, that mental pathway gets stronger, clearer, easier to access next time. Rereading is like just looking at the path. Retrieval is actually walking down it.
Okay, I get it. So what are some practical ways you or I could actually do retrieval practice?
Oh, lots of ways. Classic flashcards are basically built on this principle, right?
Yeah.
You see the prompt, you try to retrieve the answer.
Yeah.
Practice quizzes are fantastic, even low-stakes ones you make up yourself. Trying to summarize a topic in your own words without looking at your notes is excellent retrieval practice.
That sounds challenging.
It is. But that challenge is what makes it effective. Teaching the material to someone else is another really powerful way you have to retrieve it and organize it to explain it. And just applying the knowledge to solve new problems forces retrieval.
It sounds way more effortful than just rereading, but I can see how it would work better. What are the main upsides?
Well, first, it immediately shows you what you don't know. It highlights the gaps in your understanding. That's super valuable feedback. Second, as we said, it strengthens recall, making the memory more durable.
Okay.
Third, it actually improves your ability to transfer that knowledge to apply it in new situations, which is a hallmark of real learning. And interestingly, it can even reduce test anxiety because you build confidence in your ability to recall things under pressure. And yes, study after study shows it beats passive rereading for long-term retention.
Okay, sold on retrieval practice. Now, the book also mentions interleaving and spaced repetition. These sound a bit more advanced, maybe, for locking things in long term.
They're really effective strategies for optimizing retention over time, yeah. Interleaving means mixing up different, but usually related, topics or types of problems within a single study session.
Mixing them up, like instead of doing all my math problems of type A, then all of type B, I should mix A and B together.
Exactly. So instead of blocking practice mastering one thing completely before moving to the next,
Yeah.
you switch between them.
That feels weird. Wouldn't it be less confusing to just focus on one thing at a time?
It feels harder initially, and that's
Yeah.
kind of the point. Research shows interleaving forces your brain to work harder to distinguish between the different types of problems or concepts.
Yeah.
You have to figure out which strategy applies each time rather than just going on autopilot.
Ah, so it builds better discrimination skills?
Precisely. It makes your understanding more flexible.
Okay. And what about space repetition? That sounds more intuitive.
It is. It just means spreading your study or review sessions out over time rather than cramming them all together. You revisit the material at increasing intervals.
So review it soon after learning, then maybe a day later, then a few days later, and so on.
Exactly. The idea is to review it just as you're starting to forget it. That interruption of forgetting, followed by successful retrieval, dramatically strengthens the memory trace.
Okay, so how would you actually put these into practice? Interleaving and spacing.
For interleaving, if you were studying, say, different artists, you might switch between studying Picasso, then Monet, then back to Picasso's different periods, then maybe compare Monet and Renoir all in one session rather than doing all Picasso first.
Right, mixing it up.
For space repetition, flashcard apps often have this built in. They show you cards you get wrong more often and cards you get right less often over increasing intervals. Or you could simply schedule review sessions in your calendar. Review today's notes tomorrow, then again in 3 days, then next week.
And the benefits of using both.
Significantly better long-term retention is the big one for both. Interleaving, as we said, helps you develop flexibility and the ability to choose the right approach. Spaced repetition makes memories much more durable. And interleaving kind of mimics real life, where problems don't come neatly labeled.
Yeah, that's true. Okay, shifting gears a bit. Learning isn't just cognitive, right? The book talks about stress. And apparently, it's not always bad for learning. That seems counterintuitive.
It does, but it's about the type and amount of stress. Chronic high-level stress is absolutely terrible for learning. It floods your system with cortisol, impairs memory, hinders focus. We all know that feeling.
Honestly.
But moderate short-term stress, sometimes called eustress, can actually be beneficial. It releases chemicals like adrenaline and norepinephrine that can sharpen focus, improve attention, and even boost memory consolidation for a short period.
So, like the pressure of a deadline or maybe the slight nerves before a presentation can actually help you focus.
Exactly. There's a kind of sweet spot. Too little stress, you might be bored or unmotivated. Too much, and your cognitive functions decline. But that moderate, manageable level can actually enhance performance.
So, how do you create that good stress environment without tipping over into the bad kind, whether for yourself or if you're teaching?
It's a balance. The book suggests creating a supportive environment overall, but incorporating things like timed activities can introduce that mild, productive pressure. Teaching people stress management techniques is also key.
Okay.
Having really clear expectations helps reduce anxiety about the unknown. Breaking big tasks into smaller, achievable steps makes them feel less overwhelming. And, importantly, celebrating small successes builds confidence and resilience to stress.
That's a really helpful way to think about it, finding the optimal zone. Now, related to environment, the book stresses setting up clear procedures and routines. Why is that so foundational?
Because structure and predictability free up mental resources. When basic routines, how to enter a room, where to find materials, how to ask for help, become automatic, you don't waste precious working memory figuring that stuff out every time.
Right, it reduces the cognitive load.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You can then dedicate that mental energy to the actual learning task. Consistency is absolutely key here for routines to become automatic.
What are some key areas where procedures are particularly helpful?
Oh, things like entering and exiting the learning space smoothly. Transitions between activities, those can be chaotic without a routine. Managing materials, how to get help without disrupting everyone. Even simple things like how to signal you want to contribute to a discussion.
And how do you get those routines established effectively?
You have to explicitly teach them, model them clearly, then, critically, practice them. Rehearse the routine until it's smooth, then reinforce it consistently, give positive feedback when it's done right, and gently correct when it's not, and review them periodically to make sure they still make sense.
Sounds like laying down tracks so the learning train can run smoothly. Another big part of learning, especially with others, is interaction. The book talks about collaborative learning. What makes it truly collaborative, not just, group work where one person does everything.
That's the key distinction. Real collaborative learning needs a few things. First, a clear common goal everyone's working towards. Second, some sense of positive interdependence, we sink or swim together. Third, individual accountability, everyone has to contribute. And fourth, usually, close interaction and good group skills.
Okay, so structure is important even in group work. What are some strategies the book suggests for making collaboration effective?
Well, the jigsaw method is a classic. Each person learns one piece of the puzzle and teaches it to the group. Ensures everyone is needed.
I remember that.
Think pair share, which we mentioned earlier, is a simple form. Group projects work well if roles and responsibilities are really clear. Peer teaching, or tutoring, is fantastic. Teaching solidifies your own understanding. And just setting up problems that require different perspectives or skills to solve encourages collaboration.
And the payoff for doing this kind of intentional collaborative work.
Huge benefits. Again, higher engagement, development of critical thinking as you debate ideas, communication skills improve dramatically, exposure to diverse viewpoints you might not have considered, you build social skills, and honestly, it prepares you for how most workplaces function teamwork.
That's a really good point. Okay, so much of this applies broadly, but what about online learning? How do these ideas translate when you're not face-to-face?
The core principles are exactly the same. Active engagement is still paramount. You can't just post a video and expect deep learning. So successful online teaching finds ways to build in that active learning using technology. Using multimedia effectively helps. Chunking content is even more important online, breaking lectures or readings into smaller bits. Building in interactive elements like polls, quizzes, discussion forums, collaborative online documents, those are crucial.
And teacher presence, does that matter online?
Hugely important. Creating that sense of connection through regular communication, feedback, maybe video messages, showing you're there and engaged. And finding the right mix of synchronous live sessions for discussion and asynchronous self-paced activities for flexibility is key.
Makes sense. Okay, one last big area the book covers is lesson planning. Seems obvious, but why is deliberate planning so critical?
Because it's the roadmap. Without a clear plan knowing what you want students to learn, the objectives, and how you're going to get them there, learning can be inefficient, confusing, or just plain ineffective. A good plan ensures everything aligns towards a clear goal.
So what are the must-have ingredients of a good lesson plan, according to Oakley?
You need clear, measurable learning objectives. What should the learner be able to do by the end? You need something to activate prior knowledge, connect to what they already know. Then, usually, some form of direct instruction or modeling.
Okay.
Crucially, opportunities for guided practice, trying it out with support. Then, independent practice, applying it on their own. Some kind of formative assessment, checking for understanding along the way, not just at the end. And a clear closure or summary.
That's quite comprehensive. Any best practices for putting those plans together?
Absolutely. Align the activities tightly with the objectives. Use a variety of strategies to keep things engaging. Plan for differentiation. How will you support learners who need more help or challenge those ready for more? Intentionally build in retrieval practice and maybe some interleaving of older concepts. Allow time for questions. And always have a backup plan. Things don't always go exactly as scheduled.
Right, flexibility is key. It sounds like a lot of these ideas are reinforced in the book's FAQ section, too.
Yes, definitely. The FAQ really drives home that the goal of uncommon sense teaching is to connect that brain science with practical things educators and parents can actually do. It's about bridging theory and practice.
And it brings up that learn it, link it idea again, tying it to Hebbian learning neurons that fire together, wire together, which just underlines why active practice is so vital, right?
Exactly. You're literally building and strengthening those brain connections through active use. The FAQ also touches on procrastination, which is interesting, framing it often as anxiety related.
Oh, yeah.
And it mentions the Pomodoro technique, working in focused bursts with short breaks, as a practical way to manage that anxiety and just get started.
That's helpful. It's not just cognitive strategies, but managing emotions, too. And it recaps declarative versus procedural again.
Yep. A quick reminder of the difference and why you need to engage both for robust learning.
Yeah.
And it highlights those key active strategies. Again, retrieval, interleaving, collaboration is really central.
And the working memory limits.
It's another mention.
Yeah.
Just reminding us it's a bottleneck, and we need strategies to move information into long-term memory efficiently. Don't just overload it.
Good reminder for all of us. And it even touches on handling student resistance.
Yeah, suggesting things like trying to understand the root cause, using specific praise to build trust, and the value of meeting one-on-one. It's quite practical.
Definitely holistic. And the stress recap distinguishing chronic from transient eustress.
Right. Reinforcing that idea of an optimal level of challenge, not overwhelming stress. And finally, it summarizes elements of a positive classroom culture. Clear expectations, safety, encouraging collaboration as the foundation needed for all these other strategies to really work well.
And those quotes summarized at the end really nail the key messages, don't they?
You really do. Learning is about making changes in the brain, puts the biology front and center.
Retrieval practice is one of the best ways to strengthen neural links. Underscores that active recall power.
And teaching is a learning profession, whatever, it helps to learn more. A great reminder for educators, and really anyone, to keep learning about learning.
Yeah, they really capture the essence. It's about understanding the brain to teach and learn better.
Absolutely. That's the core message.
Okay, so wrapping up our deep dive into uncommon sense teaching, we've really covered a lot of ground, from the brains to learning systems, declarative and procedural, and the crucial role of working memory.
To the power of active learning strategies like retrieval practice, interleaving, spaced repetition, and collaboration.
We also looked at how stress impacts learning, the importance of routines, online adaptations, and solid lesson planning.
And the big takeaway seems to be that effective learning isn't passive. It's active, it's strategic, and it works best when we understand and cooperate with how our brains are actually wired.
So for you, the learner listening right now, here's something to think about. Based on everything we've talked about, what's maybe one strategy, just one, that you might try incorporating into how you learn or work?
Maybe it's consciously using retrieval practice after reading something important, or chunking a complex project, or perhaps trying to interleave different types of practice.
Yeah, just take a moment to consider what might resonate with how your brain seems to work best.
Because understanding these principles really can empower you to become a more effective learner, no matter what you're trying to master.
Well, thank you for joining us on this deep dive. We hope you found these insights from Uncommon Sense Teaching valuable.
And now we're curious, what else are you wrestling with? What other topics or sources should we tackle in a future deep dive? Let us know.